Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Sin-Quen Hawkins, and I'm a program director on the IEEE Future Directions team. Today's webinar is on the topic of industrial metaverse, and the event is brought to you by the IEEE Metaverse initiative. We are delighted to welcome Roberto Saracco as our featured speaker. Just a few reminders, please use the chat feature for any technical issues. We will leave some time at the end for questions and comments pertaining to the presentation. Please post your questions using the Q&A feature. I will now turn this over to Roberto.
Thank you, Sin-Quen. So, good morning, good evening, whatever, good day to all of you, and thanks for joining us to discuss this metaverse. And as you notice, the first thing is the fact that there's an S at the end of the metaverse, because there are actually many metaverses. And probably there are more interpretation of metaverse, or what a metaverse is, than what the number of metaverses that are out there. This is just to signify that this is an evolutionary technology, an evolutionary application space, and we will learn as we walk through that. This is what is being done in the IEEE FDC Metaverse Initiative. And I guess some of you may be part of it. For those who are not, I will really invite you to join. It's a discussion place, okay? It's not a place where you get the answer, but is a place where you can put question and argue with others to find answers. So today's presentation basically will go from the idea of what a metaverse is in terms of our initiative, discussing then few technologies, very few actually, that are needed to build this metaverse. And then we're going to focus on the industrial metaverse, which in a way is the one that is most advanced, at least in terms of understanding what it is, what it should be used for, and what its benefits are. Okay, so let's jump into this metaverse. Probably you have heard the fact that we can distinguish between a consumer and an industrial metaverse. Somebody is also injecting to this classification the enterprise metaverse, but I would say that the enterprise metaverse, for our purposes, is embedded within the industrial metaverse. So we have this consumer and the industrial metaverse. And actually, in our initiative, we are not talking about consumer metaverse, but we are talking about the experience metaverse, because it's something that the consumers are really looking at. Now, if you think about it and look at these graphics, it's a very easy one, okay? What is the consumer doing? Well, consumers are living in the physical space, and we love to live in a physical space, but then we would like to have something more. And to get this something more, we shift to a digital space. And we invent avatars, we invent magnificent spaces where our imagination can build to spend part of our life in this kind of digital environment. But if you're looking at the industry, it's actually the other way around. Industry is about selling stuff that we can buy. And in order to produce this stuff in the last 15, 20 years, they have been using the digital space. They have been using tools to develop these products, first as idea, then as simulation. And then eventually they are using this digital space to control the robots, the machinery that is eventually building the final product. So this places this metaverse in a quite different perspective. You're looking at it from the consumer or from the industry point of view. Industry start from the digital, consumers start from the physical space. In the end, it should be basically the same thing, because it doesn't matter where you start. What matters is where you are. And in our view, we are going to be in a space where the boundaries between the physical and the digital are getting fuzzier and fuzzier. Eventually they dissolve. We're just living in a space, okay, where we're just there. And we have both bits and atoms to play with. So this is the kind of thing that we have. And if we're looking at the market, and this is something important, because as technicians, as technologists, we're always excited about technology, but by the end of the day, it's all about dollars, okay? I know this might sound a little bit rude, but this is the story, because if you find something that can win the market, that can generate revenue, you can bet that other people will start working on that because there's a market for it. And by having more and more people working on something, what happens is that you are seeing innovation speeding up. So if we're looking at the market, what we see here is graphics from the ABI research. And basically you see that the consumer metaverse is way smaller, some 10 times smaller than the industrial metaverse today. And even if we are projecting the value of the metaverses by the end of this decade, we are still seeing that the metaverse, the industrial metaverse, is way larger than the consumer metaverse. However, the consumer metaverse will be picking up. Now, the reason why we see this difference is basically the fact that this technology is not mature enough, which means that it comes to a price. And industry is willing to pay a price if it sees an incentive, if it sees a decrease in cost. And this is actually how the industrial metaverse is being used today, as we're going to see. So you can have these goggles that cost $5,000, $10,000, and they are out of reach, basically, from most of us, but they are within reach of industry. If by wearing such a goggle, a person can augment his productivity by 2 times or 3 times, well, then it's a worth expense. And so this is the reason why we are seeing more investment in the industrial metaverse than in the consumer metaverse. If you look at the broad picture, well, there are so many players already today in the metaverse. And you can identify different spaces of market. Infrastructures, you've got the AWS as an example. Amazon is offering with his services plenty of facilities for building up and hosting a metaverse, and all the others there, of course, they are there. And then you need a human interface to interact and to be becoming part of the metaverse. Oculus Rift, of course, is something that comes to mind. But even smartphones can be the gateway to enter a metaverse. So Samsung is there, okay, even though they haven't developed specifically things for virtual reality and this kind of thing, but they have this card box that can be used with a smartphone to enter into a virtual space. And then you have these companies that are supporting the decentralization, letting different people to do different things in the same space. And then you have some computing glue, spatial computing, for putting all these things together. And of course, you're not going anywhere unless you have content, okay? And this content is being created by some companies, such as the one that you're seeing there, listed there. But also more and more, they are being built by individual people. And we're going to see a tremendous expansion of this kind of thing. And actually, we are seeing a lot of companies that are providing the basic tools to let each one of us, develop some content. And then, of course, once you have a space with so many things, the matter is, how can I know what is there? How can I know what to access there? And so you have the discovery space, and you've got Meta, Facebook, Google, and all this kind of thing. And then there are those that are going to exploit this metaverse by providing experiences. So they are selling services that can be used in the metaverse. And we've got a number of metaverses for the consumer space already, such as the Sandbox, that is providing tools for setting up a gaming and having land and resources that you can use and you can buy, you can sell. You've got the Decentraland that is in a way similar to Sandbox that is pushing toward a completely decentralized structure where everybody's doing whatever they want, but they have the possibility of linking what they want, what they are doing with everything else. You've got something like Illuvium that is basically providing tools to create and then manipulate sort of independent agents, avatars. But these avatars are not like puppets, okay, that you can manipulate with strings. They are actually independent agents. And so what you can do, you can instruct this agent what they should be doing, how they should be doing it. So it's a different way of creating a relationship, okay? Because you're teaching them, and you've got also to motivate them to do this kind of thing. It's not enough to teach them, because they are not just executor. They are independent, and they have to find some interest in what you're asking them to do, okay? And they play with other avatars. So it's a completely different world that is coming up. And again, we have the fact that you're paying, you're getting paid, and so on. Now, this being paid, this money sense is so very important, because it's really at the base of what we intend metaverse. Because our idea of metaverse is not just our idea, but the idea of many people around, is the fact that the metaverse is the space where we are living. And as any space where we are living, there are economic relationships. Okay, just imagine you're walking through a street and you see a shop, you buy some bread, okay? You shift your money to get some bread, okay? Everywhere you go in the physical space is about regulated by economy, okay, by an interest. So this should be part of the metaverse if we are really imagining the metaverse to become our space where we're living. But let's now shift to the industrial metaverse. And well, we have seen an evolution of the industry that started from having tools that are better and better. Okay, back a bit in the last century, they finally got a hold of computers that provided automation, and automation became more and more sophisticated as they could use machines like robots that you can program. And nowadays, robots can learn from the environments. They're getting smarter and smarter, embedded with intelligence. And now we have Industry 4.0. Industry 4.0 is something that basically extends beyond the boundary of industry. So you've got a company, and this company is all digitalized, is all having robots, it's all computerized and so on, but that's not being Industry 4.0. It becomes Industry 4.0 when the ecosystem, the value chain around that company is all tied together through the digital space. Through. This is the keyword, okay? You are using the digital space to do something. But the next step, Industry 5.0, is going to be a place where people in the industry, consumer, using the industry services and products and so on, are both in the physical space and in the digital space. And actually, Japan has launched an initiative that is called Society 5.0. And their idea behind this 5.0 is exactly this one. We are going to live in a place that is both bits and atoms. And there's basically no boundary between them in terms of perception, okay? You're doing things, and these things may be done with bits, with atoms. It depends on the time. It depends where you are, what you have, and what you need. So what you are seeing is actually an evolution of the idea of the metaverse from being islands, different metaverses, one developed by Siemens in the industry, providing MindSphere as an application support platform, okay, that works just for that particular industry, maybe just in that particular shop floor, okay. We are going to move in the next 2-3 years to the possibility of connecting these various islands. So we're going to have connected metaverse ecosystems. And this is interesting because it's actually driving the evolution, this concept of connecting metaverses, rather than trying to find a standard that say, okay, the future metaverse is this one, that's it, okay? You just need to comply. We are facing a situation of constant evolution. And so groups like MPI are trying to standardize not the metaverse, but the way metaverses can connect one to the other. So this is what we are expecting to have in about 2 to 3 years, okay? The possibility of moving from one metaverse to another one by connecting the two. By the end of the decade, we are probably going to have bigger, much bigger metaverses. such as the one of automotive, where you enter the metaverse, you can search for a car, you can help building a car, and designer of a car can get in touch with you and say, hey, look how this guy is using this car. And as you're using your car, you're not just using it with the four wheels on the road, but you are actually using it through the metaverse. So it means that you're also moving through the digital space, and it is moving through the physical space. So this is basically the idea. We are not going to have, by the end of this decade, even the best forecast, a unique metaverse, okay, the metaverse Earth, like the one that the European community is trying to pursue. You may know, or you may Google for it. They have a Digital Earth initiative. They have funded and is receiving quite a bit of money. It's involving many research activities, including the one of developing also personal digital twins. So myself as a digital image that can also walk along with me in the metaverse, okay? And of course, being digital, it can move around without any boundary. And this is something that is more of a vision than a reality as I see it, okay? This digital Earth concept of the European Commission. But it's still a beacon, okay? We are moving toward the direction where we need to acknowledge the existence of a digital space where we are living. So this is the kind of evolution. Now look at the industrial metaverse characteristic. They're not that much different from the one of a consumer metaverse, but let's focus on this one because these are the one that we are actually looking at considering. Well, first of all, if you accept the idea that you are living in a metaverse and you see that the metaverse is composed by many things, okay? Some is about you, your digital twin, as an example. Some is about something else that is being managed by somebody else, a digital twin or another person or a product, a service, and something like that. And you got a physical space. So you got the problem of making these two spaces, the physical and the digital one, synchronous with one another so that it makes sense. But also, it should have a persistence, meaning that if you step into the digital space, you're doing something, you're moving something around, okay? And then you go back to the physical space for a moment or for a day or for a month. When you go back, you would like to see that what you did is still there, okay? So it has to be persistent. It might have changed because somebody manipulated with it, but still, okay, the idea is that I did something that is persistent there. The same way that if I'm doing something in the physical space, it is persistent. I put someplace there, something there, okay, it's still there. Well, of course, there might be somebody that picks it up and moved away, okay, but the idea is that that object is there because I place it there. And then it has to have the characteristics of decentralization, because it's not my space, it's the space where I live, along with many others, with many other companies, with many other products, with many other services. So all these things should be supporting decentralization. At the same time, you don't want to have a mess. I mean, we are living in a messy world, okay? You're doing something and somebody else is undoing what you're doing. So we are living in a messy world. We're prepared for that. But we also have some protocols in the real world that makes our stuff, what we're doing, interoperable with others. I go in places like Brazil. I was there last week, and I was in an isolated place where they only speak Portuguese, okay? There was no opportunity of speaking English, talking English to them. But there was some sort of protocol that let me make understood, and make understand the other, okay? We need this kind of interoperability. It's not about standard, okay? Fixing something that is rigid, okay? Unless you're doing that, you cannot be part of it, because that would go against the decentralization. But you still need something that is interoperable. So you have basically in the metaverse the same challenges that we have in the physical world, being interoperable with what we have around us. As I mentioned before, everything should be supported by a flanking economic. And you should have a platform for that. And of course, you have these things like Bitcoins, like Ethereum, and this kind of thing that are already value consolidated in the digital space. You need to have a platform that supports this kind of thing and that connects this kind of thing to the physical space. Most important, it needs to be accessible. If it's not accessible, we can stop talking about it, okay? It's something that is closed, it's a closed box, there's no interest whatsoever to us. So it needs to be accessible. Now, having said that these are the main characteristic of a metaverse or industrial metaverse, we should consider how to get there, okay? What kind of technologies can support this kind of thing? Now, we can dream something amazing for the future. You can dream about having electronic contact lenses that directly move you through the physical and the digital space, okay? But this is quite far in the future. Actually, what we need to do is to look at what we have today. And what we have today may not be perfect, may not be what we really need for the perfect metaverse. But it's something that we already have, and we should try to make use of it. And as Gibson said, the future is already here. It's just a matter of looking at places and trying to understand what's there and how it can evolve. Okay, here you have two examples, and one, of course, is Second Life. Because Second Life was a sort of metaverse, okay? At that time we were not using that word, but was a sort of metaverse, the idea that you can be there. But it was more of a shift, okay? You shifted your business in the digital space and you hoped that your customer were moving to the digital space, or you shifted your social environment to the digital space and you hope that your friends would move to that social environment, the digital space, and so on. The metaverse is more, okay, as I said, is the idea of having both spaces as a single one. Now, the technologies that we need, you see this circle around with many technologies that will be supporting and that are already supporting the metaverse. You'll see something like the X reality, the software and hardware part for doing that thing. You've got digital twins, IoT, brain-computer interfaces, and of course you also have the soft one or the infrastructural ones like artificial intelligence. Okay, by the way, for us in the Western world, we usually say artificial intelligence is technology. Okay, but in China, artificial intelligence is defined as an infrastructure, and one of their 7 infrastructures for the future is actually artificial intelligence. So they are indeed seeing intelligence as a sort of fabric that is spreading all around and that you can pick up as you need it, okay? Because it's all around you, like water, okay? When you need it, you open a tap, you get some water. Same thing, you get some bit of artificial intelligence. Blockchain, NFT are also part of the infrastructure, that one that is sustaining the certification, the validation, the identification of things in the digital space. 3D image management is also crucial because we've got eyes and we are visual animals, okay? We are used to perceive our world with eyes. And so we need to have this kind of infrastructure that is supporting 3D images when we're stepping into the metaverse. And of course, we need connectivity. So we've got 4G, we've got 5G in many places, in some places at least, and people are already studying 6G, okay? 5G was sold as the ultimate wireless connectivity, satisfying all your needs. But as soon as it was starting to be deployed, they started to think about 6G. And just wait for 2-3 more years, and you will start hearing the thing that 6G is going to be the ultimate wireless connectivity. At the same time, beginning next decade, people will be starting working on 7G. So it's a never-ending story, okay, where we are getting more and more things connected with a better infrastructure. Now, let me spend a few words on digital twins. Digital twin, basically, a digital twin is a model, okay? It's composed by 3 parts. One part is a digital model of a real entity, where a real entity can be a physical one, but can also be an organization, okay? So it can be not necessarily made of atoms. Then you've got the shadowing. The shadowing part is the one that makes sure that the digital model keeps being updated with the current situation of the physical entity, of the real entity, okay? And so basically what you need to have there, you need to have IoT connecting the two so that they remain in sync. And then you have the thread, the digital thread. The digital thread is basically the story. What happened is our memory, okay? We've got a soft thread in our mind, okay? And we take decision based on this thread. We remember our experiences, and because of that, we look at what's happening now, the shadowing, okay? We're seeing through our eyes, and then we enact based on this thread, on the memory. Now, digital twins have been widely adopted, are widely adopted in industry. So it just makes sense to piggyback on this digital twin when you're talking about industrial metaverse, for having this as agent to operate. But digital twins so far have been constructed to mirror a certain aspect of a real life or a production of the shop floor, okay? What is needed in order to operate that in the metaverse is that they have to become a little bit more autonomous. They have to interact with one another in an autonomous way, and they need to have goals, okay? So they know what to do. Now, we call this kind of thing as executable digital twins, okay? And there's a lot of work being done in this area. Now, digital twins are part of the digital transformation. When a company transforms itself, its production methods and processes and so on, basically they create digital twins, okay? And they are going to use the digital twin. So they are becoming the starting point actually for the industrial metaverse. So far, digital twins are being used in the industry, widely used, but they are hidden, which means basically that you're operating a machine and you're operating it through the digital space using the digital twins, but you're not seeing the digital twin, okay? Well, once they are operating in the metaverse, you're starting to see them. So you're seeing the machine, but you're also seeing its virtual component, the digital twin. So we have to have some way of making this digital twin visible from bits into something that we recognize. Oh, that's that engine, okay? Even if it's in the virtual space. So we need this kind of conversion to be able to manipulate them as we are entering into the digital space in the metaverse. And they, of course, they can become your proxy in the cyberspace, okay? If you're talking about your personal digital twin. And this goes for enterprise, it goes for manufacturing. I mentioned before the MindSphere platform by Siemens, okay, that is providing support for the digital twin. And now it's being expanded to provide a visualization of the digital twin to make it possible to operate them in a metaverse ambient. And also, this goes through the creation of personal digital twins of workers that now can see the other worker in the metaverse space. And this is all about a cooperative working space. So you can have your working partner that is actually based in Hong Kong, but you're seeing it as if he were here, okay, at this space. And you have another co-worker and she's based in LA. Well, they are working together. They may be working together as puppets, meaning that they are directly controlled by you. You are controlling directly your personal digital twin, or because one is Hong Kong and the other one, she's in LA, the one in LA, she's still sleeping. So what you're going to see is actually the personal digital twin of that person operating and talking to you in the metaverse, having the same kind of knowledge that that person has, okay, in your brain. So this is the kind of vision that we are trying to implement in the future. Now, when you are in the metaverse, is essential, I mentioned it before, to manipulate something that you know what it is and that has an identity, and you're sure that what you're doing with that thing is clear, it's done on that thing, okay? So it's that is very important, definition of that, and being sure that everybody's recognizing that in the same way. And for doing this, we can use blockchain. It's a technology that is already there. It's quite available. It's a distributed ledger, so it goes exactly in the same line of decentralization. And it can provide you the kind of trust and the kind of tools that you need to manipulate objects in the digital space, and it goes along with NFT, of course. Then I was mentioning 3D rendering. This is very important. We need to generate something that our brain can understand visually, okay? And then this something can be used. Now, this is very tricky because you can generate an image, okay? It's not that difficult, an image of a person, but then you go there in the metaverse and you shake hands. You shake hands. But if it's just a digital, your shake is no longer working, okay? And you go through walls and you go through people, it's no longer credible, okay? What you need to have is actually something that is an image, but that is usable, that it connect to our experience. So it becomes an entity that operates in a context. And we have to understand the relation between the entity and the context. So it needs to be as real as it needs to be in order to be used, okay? Otherwise, it's just a game. And this is very important, particularly in industrial metaverse. Okay? In the game, you can have these swords going across necks and doesn't really matter, okay? But in industrial metaverse, it doesn't work that way, okay? You need to be stopped if you're doing something with an excessive pressure on a certain on a material. You need to get the feedback that something is not right, okay? Or that you need to do in a different way. So this kind of haptic feedback is very, very important. Now, it's very tricky and very difficult to do this kind of thing in a credible way. The best thing would be to connect this digital space directly to our brain. And you see there an image of a person that has all these wires, sort of a Medea, no? This mythological person with the long hairs. And there are works going on trying to connect the brain-computer interface, okay, with the digital space. However, today, I would say that it's more a vision than reality. Yes, you have this person that can move the cross eye on the screen, that can operate a robot doing a little bit thing. But we have to face the fact that, yes, something is technologically feasible, but at least today, it seems really dystopian. I don't think that most of you would like to have this kind of cap here. And probably even a lesser subset would accept to have spikes inserted in your skull and in your brain to have an easy connection, a wireless connection with computer, with the digital space. So we're still pretty far from there. Now, the metaverse can be built by looking at different layers, okay? You don't need to have it all at the same time. And actually what the industry is doing, they are starting to see, what do I have now? How can I make it better? Is there a possibility to have a glue over that would improve what I have? And so you have this kind of layers, you see. You've got the IoT layers with the field level, the sensor activation, something like that. Then you've got all the control layer that is making sure that everything is working. Then you've got the SCADA layer, which is basically a protocol for controlling industrial machine. And then you have upper layers for controlling the software part of production, like planning as an example. And then you've got even software for the enterprise planning. But what you really would like to have in the enterprise, we don't have it now in industrial metaverse, you would like to bring in your customer. Okay, so that actually they can participate within your metaverse. But of course, you don't want your customer to manipulate robots, okay, and to create a mess. It's already mess, a pretty mess like it is in the shop floor. So what we need is actually frames. A frame is something that provides me a view and a capability of interaction in the metaverse that is fitting my need, my responsibility, my accountability. And even within the same company, and we do have this kind of thing supported by platforms like MindSphere as an example, you need to have frames because not all people are qualified, are enabled to do the same thing. And also not all people have the same kind of knowledge. So the same thing that exists in the metaverse, it can be partly physical, partly digital, will be seen differently depending on who is watching it, who is seeing it. And this is very, very important. Again, here we have the problem of interoperability, because just imagine you have different frames in a single metaverse. How do they connect to one another? And this again is something that the Empire Initiative is looking at. So the point now is we are having industry, and there are more and more that have some sort of little metaverse. How do they operate it? How do they evolve it, okay, to becoming more and more performant? Well, today, most industry already have access to a digital space for support. You're using computer for seeing, hey, I don't understand this, how should I do this, what is the checklist, and all this kind of thing, and even to delegate something, okay, let's have that robot doing this kind of thing. But what we're going to do is to move from this support situation into an ambient situation. I'm no longer using the digital space, I am in a space that is both digital and physical. And this is going to require a new sort of culture, a new sort of responsibility. Here I'm saying no one knows you're a dog. It was an expression used for internet, okay? Once you're connected to internet, nobody knows who you are. But actually, when we are in industrial metaverse, I need to know who you are. I need to know what kind of responsibility you have, what kind of accountability you can have, what kind of knowledge you have, okay? And it doesn't matter whether this is now possible to be shared into a digital form. I still need to have you as a responsible person. So I need to identify you. So the identity authentication is crucial, okay? And based on that, we can have frame. That is basically what you can do, okay? What can you do? And of course, accountability is crucial for anything that is industrial manufacturing, but also in the social area, okay? Who did it, okay? So this is something that should be preserved and ensured. So how are we going to build this industrial metaverse? Well, we can start from the real world, as is shown here in this picture, and then we have IoT. We actually have AIoT, which means they are getting smarter and smarter. Okay, this is a new acronym, meaning artificial intelligence IoT. So they are getting smarter and smarter, and this would allow people operating in the real world to be seamlessly connecting to the digital space through the digital twin of themselves and digital twin of the various equipment, of the various thing, of the various ideas that are in the cauldron of the enterprise. And all these things is supported, is providing feedback back and forth, okay, between the two spaces to create a unique space, is supported by a cluster of technologies that in turn make use of computational spatial engines, are called, okay, that in turns will be using technologies like blockchain, computer graphics, and so on, plenty of this kind of thing, okay. So the industry, in order to make this shift from the current situation where they have one physical space, one digital space interconnection to a single unique space, they have to first define what kind of industrial metaverse they need to have, or what is the first step. And then assess where they are in terms of technology, in terms of infrastructure to support this kind of thing, and also, most important, in terms of skill and culture. And I can tell you, I am part of the Industrial Association in Italy, and most of our time is being spent discussing the lack of skills that we have to manage the technology that we can use, okay? So it's not about the lack of skill of tomorrow, it's the lack of skill that we are experiencing today to make use of the technology that we can use today. So this is a crucial part. The second thing is that you want to move from the physical space to the digital space, embed all the things together, but then the first step should be to move from the digital to create a digital space. And industry has been doing this kind of thing through the digital transformation. So the industrial metaverse should be a grow out of the digital transformation. And here you see in these bubbles the fact that many people are misunderstanding digitization. Oh, I'm using a computer, I did the digital transformation. No, you're just using a computer and you're spending more because you have to buy a computer. And then some people are saying, hey, since I have a computer, I can do things differently, okay? Most of the time when you buy a computer, what are you going to do next? You buy a printer. because you do something on the computer, you print it, and then you pass out a piece of paper, okay? Well, folks, that's not digital transformation, okay? It's not even digitalization. With digitalization, you get rid of printers, you change your processes, you do the process engineering so that you understand in every way, in every activity you're doing every single day, that you have computer. You don't need a printer anymore, okay? You can dialogue with computer and pass along with computer. But then, if you really want to engage into digital transformation, you need to transform your business. You need to acknowledge, to be aware of the fact that now with your company, you can do something different. Before you were building products and you were selling boxes, okay? But now, if you have all this digital space, you can start overlaying on these boxes that you're selling bits, and you start selling services. So a company has not gone through the digital transformation process unless it has transformed its business. That's really when you can say, oh, now I have done a digital transformation. And when we're dealing about industrial metaverse, you have basically this kind of step. You can say, okay, I'm in industrial metaverse of a sort because I have that robot and I can work with that robot in the digital space through my digital twin. But then what you want to do is the ability of working throughout your company, okay, using the metaverse. And this is a sort of parallel thing with digitalization. But then, of course, the next step is to bring in your customer and say, okay, we are all part of a metaverse. You can benefit from much better services, from way of doing things that you would never have dreamt before, okay? And this is why I want to bring you the industrial metaverse. So we need to capitalize on digital twins. And we need to have this digital twin visible, as I mentioned before. We need to create these executable digital twins. And we need to mix them with a personal digital twin and visualize them so that I can really interact with them. Now, all of these has to be supported by a platform, okay? And there are a number of platforms support this kind of thing. I was mentioning before AWS. They are supporting this kind of thing for enabling us to create a metaverse and to operate a metaverse, to manage entities and processes. Now, one of the crucial points to understand is that you don't have to shift current physical processes to the metaverse. You will do the same kind of mistake as if you are doing by buying a computer and buying a printer, okay? You need to design new processes because you're in a new space that can offer a different thing. So you need to start in a way from a greenfield design and see what happens. And this is something that has already happened. Let me give you a few examples. Siemens has created in Berlin what they call the Siemensstadt Square. And this is a place that was an old industrial space, very, very old, in ruins, okay, wasted. They started designing it, in re-engineering it. The architects designed a new thing, okay? So they created this place in the digital space. And then they implemented this into a physical space. So what you see here is actually, you know, an image of that kind of thing. But they didn't get rid of the digital thing. They kept the digital thing because the idea is that people living in this space will live in the metaverse. They will live through, at the same time, the physical space and the digital space, which is overlaid on that. So it's a completely different thing. The same thing we're doing in Turin, where we have this cave, is a place that is managed by the Turin Polytechnic. It's called SIM, Center for Innovative Manufacturing. And there's also another one in Milan, by the Polytechnic of Milan. And basically, this is providing a metaverse. People are bringing their equipment, or they're bringing their digital twins of their equipment. And people are going there using goggles and something like that to operate this equipment. Doesn't matter whether it's physical or digital, okay? It feels and it looks the same to them, and they are doing this kind of thing. But of course, being in the metaverse, this can also be done by a company that is 100 miles away or on the other side of the world. This is all based on digital twins. So to close, what the future will be? Well, think about our living today. We live in a physical space, okay? That's clear. But we feel part of this space, isn't that? It's not that it's you and then there's something else there. No, I feel I live in this physical space. Well, today we are in a situation where through tools and other stuff, you use goggles and discuss something like this, you can see a virtual space, you can see a digital space, okay? But it's very clear to you from a perceptual point of view that it's me and it's that, okay? And I've got an interface, a tool that let me walk into that space. Well, the future, if we are going really to succeed to create this metaverse, is the fact that I will feel part of this metaverse. I will feel part of the digital and physical space at the same way, at the same time. Well, help us developing this kind of thing, developing the concept, the idea, okay? Because there's no metaverse without humans, and we need to develop all the basic building blocks, including the education, as I mentioned before. We are trying to do this through the IEEE Metaverse initiatives. So do join us. And here you have my references. So if you want to get in touch with me, please do so. Send me an email, get in touch, okay? And we can discuss this further. It's really work in progress. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Roberto, for sharing with us your vision and your insights into industrial metaverse. We have a number of questions. We have about 10 minutes left, so we will do our best to go through as many of them as we can. Roberto, do you want to select the questions, or would you like me to select the questions?
Well, if you want to go ahead. I just opened, I was back from the sharing. So.
Okay. Well, I think this is a question that...
So please go ahead. Otherwise, I have to read them probably.
Okay, well, one of the questions that we have is, can you just talk about the two differences that you see between the metaverse and Second Life?
And Second Life. Okay,
yes.
Well, I would say metaverse is Second Life 2.0 in the sense that Second Life had this idea that you can do things in a digital space. It was both doing things in a business way, and many companies, you remember, bought land or islands in Second Life. And actually Second Life is still here, okay? It hasn't disappeared and is being used for something. So there was this idea that it can be used for business, and there was this idea that you can walk in that space and meet friends and go around with friends and see something. So it was all the social and the physical space, but it was something separated from the physical one, okay? So you had this thing, you had the opportunity of walking in the cyberspace, in digital space, and do things that probably wouldn't have been possible to do in a physical space. But there's this division between the physical and the digital space. With the metaverse, the idea is that you are living in a single space that is comprising both the digital and the physical. And perceptually, there's not going to be any difference between the two.
Thank you, Roberto. Here's another question. Metaverse seems to be too big a thing that one organization can handle. How will this all work together? You know, how are these broken down into standards and interfaces so that small players can as well benefit in the ecosystem? Where is it good to start, and how can we build as incremental set of services?
Well, this is a great question and a good point. Just think about not the metaverse, but the world, okay? We are living in a world. How many players are there in the world? I'm not talking about people, I'm talking about the companies and an organization and a standardization, and even, you know, standardization organization, there are more than one and so on. So we have a world that is basically decentralized. In spite of that, we have learned over time, adapting, okay, to live in this world, even though it's different, okay? Even though if I'm moving from country to country, I'm facing a different language, I'm facing different foods or something like that, I can live in that. Well, we are going to have to live in different spaces. That is just becoming, in a way, more complicated, and in another way, probably easier. because it's easier to shuffle bits than it's easier than shuffle atoms, okay? But clearly, the current standardization activities like the MPI that I mentioned, and we are part of that as this initiative, as this FDC initiative, is starting from the idea that no, it's too difficult. You cannot standardize everything, okay? you need to take it step by step, starting with standardized the interoperability, make it possible to face different situations, make it possible to have different people invent their space, because this is also going to stimulate innovation. This is going to create a tremendous improvement rather than having a rigid scheme where either you do that or you don't do it, okay? So this will be a challenge, but it's not that different from the challenges we are facing every day in the physical world.
Yeah, it's going to take a lot of players for all of this to come together for sure. Here's another question, and it's one that's been asked many times. Is there even a consensus on what the metaverse even means? As there's perhaps contextual connotation and perspective, and without an accepted definition, how can we develop this technology?
Well, let's say that the truth is that there's no consensus. At least I'm talking to different people, each one has his own idea. I think it's good to have these different perspectives, because actually we don't have yet an implementation of any one of these, okay? But by having all these different points of view and each one trying to develop his own view of things, we're going to understand both what is feasible and what is not feasible, but also most importantly, what is useful and what is not useful, what is acceptable to people and what is not acceptable to people. We shouldn't take for granted, as an example, that this idea of the metaverse, where we are no longer distinguishing between the physical and the digital, is an acceptable thing, okay? Might be acceptable to somebody, but not to others. There are plenty of social ethical questions. There are concerns about the fact of things saying, hey, yeah, now we are going to have this Apple visor and it costs $3,500 bucks, and only a few people will be able to get it. And those will be the fortunate one, the lucky one, that will going to experience something, and there's going to be a gap, okay? So there's going to be a metaverse for the rich and the physical space for the poor. I mean, there are many, many questions about this kind of thing, okay? And as there are many questions in the world, we are really talking about a new space for life, okay?
Thank you, Roberto. Let's get to some questions that focuses on application. How do you expect that the metaverse can improve education, and at the different levels of education as well?
Well, that's also a very interesting question, and it's also a question that is being addressed by several universities. I've seen both Japan, China, and United States universities working really on this kind of thing. And basically, the idea is this one. We are living in a world that is potentially a tremendous source of information. We can really do anything. If you want to become a surgeon, you can start from your computer, okay? You get lessons. You want to pilot a plane, you can do that, okay? From your computer, you learn, okay? And so the potential is enormous. But along with this potential, you have the reality of a 24-hour days. You're doing many other things. So the real challenge today is, how can I bring the knowledge that is actually needed by a person at that particular time into that person's hands or into the person's brain? So this is the big challenge. And clearly, the availability of a digital space where something is easier, okay, where something can be tried out, okay. You can try to pilot a plane in the metaverse, and if you crash, it's not really a big deal, okay. So you can learn much faster because you can make mistakes there, but also you can learn much faster because you can see alternatives and you can evaluate alternatives. So there's a potential from the metaverse to increase our level of abstraction And all our humankind history is about reaching higher level of abstraction. We are losing something doing that, okay? Because just imagine if we were moved back to 3,000 years ago, I guess we will die in a very short time because we wouldn't know how to do things, okay? The very basic things. Now we go to the supermarket for food. But yet this growing level of abstraction as creating a tremendous society, something that was unthinkable 200 years ago, 2,000 years ago, and so on.
Yeah. So this question is kind of along the line of, you've kind of answered some of it already, but maybe we can expand this a little bit more. The question is, the evolution of metaverse, has a wide effects on other domains, which you've already touched upon. Can you touch upon maybe a little bit on perhaps the energy domain and also mental health? What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, well, these are two very different things.
It is. They are.
Even though you can become crazy when you're seeing your energy bill. I think that we, at least for the next few decades, we are facing a major issue in energy. And the major issue is about getting the energy we need in the form that we need without polluting the environment. Okay? Probably by the end of this century, the problem will be different. Okay, will be more about how can I ensure that the way I'm using the energy is not creating an increase in entropy. Okay, so that you have this dissipation problem. But today we are facing more than the source, and sustainability is part of that. Okay, we are talking a lot about sustainability. Now, everybody is in favor of sustainability, and then everybody, I think, is behaving in a non-sustainable way. Most of the time is because we don't know that our way of doing is not sustainable. So having the possibility of getting information every single time we're doing something. So we're living in a space where information is together with our action. Okay, so it's just a single one. And we understand that by unplugging our charger, we can save a little bit. That this unplugging, it doesn't matter at all if I'm doing it, but if 1 billion people are doing it, then it matters, okay? So creating a global awareness of where we are, what we're doing, what the impact of things is, well, I think that is important. Then can be a serious contribution to the energy thing. I've seen the change that has made the use of electric vehicle, because the driver becomes immediately aware of where he can go, where he should stop to recharge the thing, how he should drive. Okay, you get an immediate, and I was amazed to see my son with the electric drive car. He relearned to drive. Okay, because by the end of the drive, the system told him, you have been 66% good, which means that you could have may use much less energy if you have driven differently. And now is about 85, 86. Okay, so he's improving. But the same thing would be true also for internal combustion engine. Okay, it's just that we don't get this warning. We don't get this feedback saying, hey, you can improve your driving. By moving to the space where information can be provided, you can really see an improvement in energy usage. And for what concerns mental thing, well, I guess that is not really my area of thing. Okay, I have seen studies and research made on using the cyberspace to help elderly to feel less alone. I've seen programs and research being done to help autism, people suffering from the autism syndrome, using the computer, and so interacting with that. So I guess that this is another opportunity for improving something, but I'm really no expert in that. So
yeah, thank you, Roberto. We at the top of the hour, but I'm just going to end with one more question. There's a couple questions that's along this line in terms of, the maturity of the security protection in the industrial metaverse. And then the second question is not necessarily related to an industrial metaverse, but just in general, just the dangers of having duality of lives, kind of parallel lives and separate lives between the digital and the physical reality, and your thoughts on that. We will end with that questions. If you can
Are we
address
going to
those two.
become Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde? Well, first of all, let me say, if you can in some way save all these questions and you send them to me in an email, I'll try to look through them and post the answer, and we can post them on our website so that people can find my thoughts on that. And we can open up a discussion on this, because I do not have the truth. Okay, so it's just a very, very personal opinion. So coming back to your question, well, the cyberspace is providing easier way for any malicious attempt. Okay, it's less costly. Just look at the phishing. Okay, how much phishing we have today? If you had to sell snail mail, it would cost you a fortune. So it's clearly easier to do things, both good and bad things. So security is going to be, and cybersecurity is going to be crucial. And here we're going to have an even further complexity on the fact that these two, digital and physical, are synchronized. So what you need to have is a cyber and security, physical security, that go hand in hand. And this is going to open up new scenarios. Clearly, there's not going to be any metaverse unless we are securing some sort of tools that can allow policing and this kind of thing. I've just seen recently an announcement, it was on the New York Times, I think, that several police departments in the US are now exploiting the digital space and camera and security camera and this kind of thing, and artificial intelligence to foresee if there's some malicious activities that is going on or that can be going on. And at the same time, that this is providing more safety to citizenship, there are several people opposing this kind of thing because they are seeing this as a sort of a big brothers, and they are strongly objecting to this. So we are going to see this kind of things over and over. We are facing bigger opportunities, and with this bigger opportunity becomes bigger threat and bigger challenges. For the part on the dual personality, I think we are already suffering part of that. There are some people that really have some pathological addiction to the cyberspace. The more you're making it easier to walk in these kind of spaces, and the more addicted you're going to be. But that's the same addiction that we have in the physical space. So I think that in the future, if we're going to have a metaverse that is really perceived as a single space we are living in, the challenges will be very, very similar to the one we have in today's physical space, because it's all about living.
All right. Thank you, Roberto. Again, thank you for a very informative presentation and your insights into industrial metaverse. And thank you to all of our attendees for taking the time today to join us. And we will try our best to get to your questions offline. Please stay connected and look for other upcoming events within the IEEE Metaverse Initiative, as well as with other programs within the IEEE Future Directions. This concludes our event, and thank you again, all of you, for joining us today.